Good morning, everyone. A good tevach, Shavua Tov. We are continuing here in the words of the PELE YOETZ in the new chapter that we just began, Ahavas Ish v'Isha, the love of a husband and a wife. And we spoke about in the first class the tremendous Ahava Aza, the deep and strong love that a husband and a wife must share for each other. That love, nothing will be able to break the bonds of that Ahava, no matter how many mistakes a spouse will make, no matter if a spouse will disappoint or frustrate the other one, we overlook because the Ahava Aza, the deep bonds of strong love that exist between us because of the mutual respect and the unconditional love and how we view each other and how we see each other and how we give to each other supersedes anything. But now he writes a very interesting point. A husband has to love his wife, and again, as the PELE YOETZ pointed out, we're starting from the perspective of the man's love to the wife. And he says, although that the love has to be as strong as we described, nevertheless, how much you love your wife should never get in the way of your personal avodas Hashem, the way that you're going to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, what does he mean by that? Like we learned in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Al tarbe sichi ma'isha, a man should not speak excessively with a woman. And the Mishnah explains, Bi'ishtay amru, that's talking about one's own wife. Shekol amar besichi ma'isha, because anyone who is excessive in his conversation with his wife, goyrem ra'a la'atzmai, he will bring bad upon himself, ubayta midivrei Torah, and he will be mevatel, he will disregard the learning of Torah, v'seifo yarish gehenim, and at the end of the day, he will inherit not the world to come in a peaceful way, he is going to inherit a portion in Gehenim, in the fiery world down there. So the Mishnah is very clear. And that is, it doesn't say don't speak to your wife at all. It doesn't say don't take her out on a date and have a romantic evening. It doesn't say that you shouldn't have tremendous, deep well springs of love that are existing constantly between a husband and a wife. Rather, it cautions that if it goes overboard in the conversation and in the time that you spend together, then you'll end up being mevatel, you'll end up keeping yourself away from your personal world of avodas Hashem. Which means that the most important relationship that a person has in this world is between them and the Ribbono Shel Olam. The wife is going to be the second most important relationship. And together a husband and wife will refine themselves and elevate themselves and find ways to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu better. But if the immersion that a husband has in his wife's life, if the conversation becomes excessive, if the time together is often, and it will begin to take him away from his regular davening schedule, from his regular learning schedule, from his regular levels of Yiras Shamayim and the like. So then that is what Chazal are cautioning us. Don't disregard the most important relationship in your life, which is between you and the Ribbono Shel Olam, merely because you want to fulfill the words over here of the PELE YOETZ of having Ahava Aza. You can have Ahava Aza for your wife, a deep burning love for your wife, and still have a deeper burning love for the Ribbono Shel Olam and the service of Hashem. And that's what he is cautioning about over here. The Rabbi Seinozal, our sages tell us, somebody who follows the advice of his wife, and this is interpreted as in spiritual matters, Neufel beGehenim, they are going to fall into Gehenim, into that world down there. Which means that if you're going to listen excessively to your wife's advice and her direction and what she has to say and how she thinks that you should learn and you should daven and what is right and what is wrong, as we're going to see, and again, there's no offense that is meant with any of these words. We're trying to define the reality of our relationship so that we should understand properly. And that is that by the very nature of a woman, there's a more emotional side to the hardware that she has as a person. And sometimes, in order to excel and to succeed and to achieve in Ruchnius, the seichel, the intellect, has to override the emotional world. And therefore, if a husband who needs to connect to the intellectual aspect of Avodas Hashem, of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is going to listen too much to the more emotional-based advice of his wife when it comes to directing him and guiding him and advising him in his personal world of Avodas Hashem, it is going to take him off the straight path that he is supposed to be on in the way that he's going to serve Hashem. And therefore, Chazal just caution that be careful how much advice you take. Sometimes, by the way, a wife is spot on in the way that she sees her husband. She understands his strengths and his faults and what it is that he has to work on. And she can encourage him to be able to become a greater Oved Hashem. And that will work in many cases. But be on guard, say Chazal, that make sure that the advice that you are receiving is al pi seichel. It's coming from an intellectual, clear understanding of who you are, and not from an emotional-based response of a wife who's thinking to herself, well, if he doesn't go to daven today, he's going to spend more time with me. If he doesn't go to the shir and learn Torah tonight, then he'll get to be home together with us and the children. If he doesn't go to shul on time for Shabbos, so then we'll be able to have a family gathering, and so on and so forth. Now, sometimes a husband will, of course, have to listen to his wife when she is in need of him and the like, and every situation will be different. We can speak about that, but at the end of the day, it has to be in the world of Avodas Hashem that the seichel, the intellect, is overriding the emotion. And since that women in general have very developed emotional worlds, we don't want that to get in the way of a husband's Avodas Hashem. Well, again, we're not criticizing and we're not putting down. We're just stating the facts that are on the table and the reality that is there, so that a husband and a wife can reside in perfect marital harmony. Have a wonderful day.